Okay, two more arguments, two more objections to rational egoism. The next one is probably the most popular one, is the arbitrariness objection. Let's say you, for some reason, you claim that you ought to just maximize the welfare of only blue-eyed people. You say that, yeah, blue-eyed people, they're the ones that we should worry about their benefit. And you can't explain why, right? You can't say why they should be preferred. You just think that they should be preferred. It seems pretty arbitrary, right? It seems like you're just randomly picking a bunch of people. Now, a rational egoist claims that I ought to maximize the benefit of just one person, myself. So it seems like a rational egoist is even more arbitrary. Rather than picking a swath of people at random, you're picking one person at random and saying, let's benefit that person altogether. So it seems like the claim is equally arbitrary, or even more arbitrary. Now, you may respond that oftentimes we make non-arbitrary choices that we can't explain just based on preferences. So let's say I prefer pepperoni and green chili pizza. I'm going to choose that, and I won't be able to explain, well, the health benefits of pepperoni. I won't have that kind of a response. But still, it's not arbitrary. It's based on my preferences. Still, it could be the case. You could respond, but wait a second. Some preferences are we still think are arbitrary. So, for example, the blue-eyed, right? If you prefer the blue-eyed people, and there's no reason why you prefer the blue-eyed people, that still seems arbitrary. So it seems like something that we need some reason. Why is it the case that you should prefer yourself over everybody else? I don't know that actually works. That's from the article. I think when they pick blue-eyed people, I think they're appealing to something like a latent concern that we have of racism. And I think it's immoral to choose blue-eyed people, but I don't know that it would be arbitrary to choose blue-eyed people. If you prefer blue-eyed people, that's a reason to choose to benefit them, right? It's not a good reason, though. I mean, it's a morally bad reason, because people shouldn't be divided like that, right? I mean, I agree that when we look at it, one of the things we're going to ask is, are these people, is this distinction we're making between people one that we should be making? Give me some good reason, and if you don't have a good reason, then why did you're going to say that, why did you pick it, right? But it's not arbitrary. You have a preference, whatever that preference is. It's not an arbitrary preference. It's not arbitrary. It's a preference, but it's an immoral preference, right? It's immoral to act upon, I should say. So yeah, I don't know that I buy that response. A second objection, though, that you could give, and I think this is a solid one, is that you might lack a preference for your own welfare, right? Remember, in the psychological egoism episodes, we talked about how it sure seems like there's very weak evidence for psychological egoism, very strong that it's false. So it seems like you could prefer the worst for yourself. Or prefer to benefit somebody else. You might have that preference, and if that's your preference, then it sure seems like it would be what would we say? It would be I guess it's a point against the arbitrary for the arbitrariness, right? You can ask the question, okay, then why choose yourself? If I could choose based on whatever I wanted to, but I could have all these bizarre wants, so like, why pick this specific kind of a want? And that is, I think, is a solid objection. And then a second response to this arbitrariness objection, that it is arbitrary to just choose ourselves for benefit, comes from a philosopher named Sidgwick. In a seminal work that he had, and I'll put a link in the description to this guy's book. Although I think you can find it. I think, you know what? It's over 100 years old, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not a legal expert, but I'm pretty sure that means you can get it for free. So yeah, I think I even got it for free. So yeah, I'll see if I can put that link on there, and you can check it out for free. Um, and here's what Sidgwick would say: there are certain distinctions that we have that are we don't look for justifications for, right? We don't try to give reasons for, and these are non-arbitrary justifications, or non-arbitrary distinctions. Excuse me. And one of them is that there's a real distinction between individuals, human individuals. So it's not arbitrary that I say I'm concerned with, the big I, and not with some other, because clearly we are distinct in these ways. So the distinction between myself and all other individuals is fundamental in determining the ultimate end of a rational action for an individual. All right, now the author, Shaver, the author of the article, actually has written a piece on this in 1999, and he notes that, first of all, it's kind of ambiguous what Sidgwick's response is here. He could be just pointing out, hey, individuals are different, right? We have distinct histories, we have distinct memories, we have special access to our own mental contents, right? Nobody can see through my eyes. They have to only see through their own eyes. So he could be saying we are actually distinct, and therefore we should care about ourselves, but doesn't really it doesn't really get you there, right? Okay, so we're really distinct. Now what, right? Like, why? That doesn't prove that I should care about myself over other people. That just proves that I am different from other people. And in fact, everybody agrees with that, right? Nobody is like, oh, we're different? No, dang it. That got, right? Number two, Sidgwick could be trying to defend himself against Parfit's type of objection, which is that, remember the brain one a couple of, I think, videos ago, where you get your brain transferred into somebody else's, or half of your brain transferred into somebody else's body, and it shares all the same memories and stuff. Parfit could be saying, no, we are distinct individuals, between Albert and Brian, I think it was. So that kind of an argument won't work. Of course, if that's what he means, then he's only defending himself against one objection, which, and a bizarre one in the first place. So it doesn't seem like that's going to do much for his argument. And a third thing would be that he could be claiming, like, all right, we are individuals, we are actually distinct. So imagine an impartial point of view, imagine my point of view. There's nothing, just like the impartial point of view is non-arbitrary, my point of view is non-arbitrary, and therefore, the arbitrariness objection doesn't apply. However, there are other points of view, Shaver says, that we can consider. The point of view of our species, the point of view of our family, the point of view of our country. And Shaver could say, hey, I exist as an individual, not as a hive member or something like that. But he's going to say, look, Shaver's going to respond, but look, these are just as non-arbitrary then as your personal point of view. So why pick them? It does seem to be arbitrary once you start to pick after that point. I don't know. I think, to Shaver's point, personally, I don't necessarily buy it, because I am a skeptic about the existence of groups. I don't. You say your species point of view. Yeah, and I get that, but I don't think a species is necessarily well. I do believe species are real. I don't believe countries are real. Right? I think they're just a collection of the people that are in them. And I realize that there are a bunch of objections to what I just said, and that's totally fine. I'm convinced that the countries, although they're useful and they're helpful to think that way, and we even have obligations to other people based on those kinds of fictions, I don't think that they're real enough to me to be able to use this as an argument. Species, though, is a good one, because I do think there's such a thing as a human. But I don't know. Maybe I could say that the species has, in itself, has 0 points of view, right? It's the individuals of a species that have points of view, and from their point of view, they can look at the species. So, or maybe the species is part of their point of view. I don't know, something like that. But that's why, I don't know, that Shaver's third point here, I just don't follow. And I think, I personally don't, I'm not big on the whole objection in the first place. I don't think So the idea is that it's arbitrary to just pick yourself and to benefit over everybody else. But I think, and I think the argument, I don't like the way it's set up. I think it tends to a confusion. So if I were to just say I'm picking blue-eyed people to benefit, yeah, okay, that seems pretty, that might seem pretty arbitrary. But if we're going to say I'm just picking one person, then myself, and that's just as arbitrary as the blue-eyed people, not necessarily. I mean, if you were to just look from a what would you call it? From a non-personal point of view, from a totally impartial point of view, and look at everybody and said that's the one. Well, of course, that would be very arbitrary, but that's not what you're doing. You're looking at it from your own perspective and reasoning. This is what we're worried about: is rationality, right? Reasoning happens in the individual. I'm not a rational egoist, by the way. So when I'm saying this, I'm just saying I don't know that I like this argument. I'm not saying that I have it down, but I don't know that I think that this one works, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, human reasoning occurs in a subject. A subject has no experience of other subjects, so the subject's benefit is non-arbitrary, right? It doesn't seem like it's arbitrary for me to pick myself, right? Like I am doing the reasoning. I am looking from my perspective, and so it doesn't seem arbitrary for me to pick that person that's getting that perspective. I mean, think about if you were to look at it like either you or somebody else was going to get tortured. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be you shouldn't choose yourself to be tortured. I'm saying you have non-arbitrary concerns, right? I don't want to get tortured, right? and you're going to have to wrestle with that. And it's not going to be like you're sitting there thinking, who should be tortured? Well, it would be totally arbitrary for me to pick myself to be saved. Right? I mean, that's not legitimate. So I don't know. I don't really buy that one.